Good evening and welcome to the Fireside Chat with Lyndon LaRouche for Thursday, October 27th. There are many things tonight, and so we're going to move right to it. Today we had the second session or second convening of a conference process by the Schiller Institute called For World Peace, Stop the Danger of World War. Now, just to say something about not just the context, because in a moment we're going to get a full report on this. This is coming at a time where at the United Nations in particular, actually both in New York and in Geneva, there's a pretty intense confrontation going on between, we'll put it this way, those forces that are committed to suicide at the hands of a financial oligarchy that believes it is clever enough to provoke the world to and past thermonuclear war and yet preserve its rule, versus those forces of sanity that know that not only is that not possible and, of course, undesirable, but that rather another solution exists. And that solution could be a solution that allows for the cooperation of the people of the world as a whole. Yes, there will be differences. Yes, there will be disputes, but those disputes do not have to result in conflict, a war that is, and deadly and fratricidal war, including thermonuclear war. Now, that may not sound like much, but it's rather important that the basics be reasserted in that we are dealing at the moment with forces that are divided between durable survival for the planet as a whole and momentary, and at that, doomed sort of temporary survival for a system that is well past its usefulness, if it ever had any, to the world as a whole. We're not talking about socialism or capitalism or anything like that. We're talking about an entirely different conception of mankind. And that's what's really at issue. That's what is really at stake. And that's what was being discussed today at our conference. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to divide our program, and we're going to begin with Dennis Small, who was the primary organizer of the conference in the sense of convening many of the people. Of course, it was headed by Helga Sepp-LaRouche, but Dennis will start us off and give us sort of an idea of what the purpose of the conference was, the arc of it, and some of what occurred, and then we'll take some questions on that, and then we'll follow that with a discussion that Gerry Rose will be leading, in which we'll hope to get some reports from much of the activity that we were involved in today in various ways. And so that's how we're going to do this tonight. So without saying more, let me turn this over to Dennis for the report on the conference For World Peace, Stop the Danger of World War. Dennis?
Yeah, hi, thanks. Well, in effect, one of the speakers at the conference was Diane Sayre. So the activities that were involved in the United States and the activities building this movement against nuclear war and in favor of world development are one and the same process. So the two parts of this discussion are in fact one. And in fact, there were plenty of questions directed to the participants today, including Diane, about what can we do about the United States, how can we change this situation, what role can we play, and so forth. Now, I think the most interesting thing about what happened today is that this is a very rapidly moving and developing self-organizing process, beginning with legislators, former and current congressmen, legislators, and so on from different parts of the world, which is growing very rapidly. The central idea here is what Helga Sepp-LaRouche has stated from the outset and has insisted, which is that the threat of nuclear war is very, very real, and that the fact that we could, in fact, all end up incinerated if we don't turn this around makes us, whether we like it or not, world citizens. That there are no interests other than the interests of the one humanity, and that this is not contradictory with being a nationalist or a patriot in one's own country, as Friedrich Schiller said. You can be both, and you actually have to be both. And Helga emphasized over and over again that people's fighting for the interests of their country is important and good, but it must never be in contradiction with the interests of the one humanity. This was a point that Diane emphasized in her own particular way, given her own expertise and background in music, by saying it's like a chorus. Everybody has to sing together. And it's not a chorus unless everyone is singing, and if someone is off, then it's not going to work. Now, the issue is actually more detailed and profound than that when you get to the issues of what the cause of war is. Because I think that many of the people did understand and agree with our analysis, that of the Schiller Institute, that the driving force towards war is the economic breakdown crisis, but the level of understanding of that is insufficient. Where there is an understanding that that's what's involved and not just a question of some bad people wanting to fight, the solutions, the crucial issue of how to solve this is what Lyndon LaRouche uniquely brings to the table through the activities of Helga and the rest of us in the Schiller Institute and in the LaRouche movement. Now, as Dennis was just telling you, 3 weeks ago was the first such seminar of current and former legislators. And we had 7 initiators, 7 initiators of this process who spoke, representing principally countries of Latin America and the Caribbean, and of course Helga and Diane Sayre was there as well. That group of 7 initiators developed and presented a statement, a declaration to build this second meeting. And that statement, which began with 7 signatures, now has well over 40 signatures. The growth of this is interesting because there were 16 speakers today. We were not able to shoehorn them into 3 hours scheduled time. It ran over, and that was a good thing. This was something that was overflowing the edges that had been set up for it, and it made it completely clear that we have to have another meeting, which we will, somewhere around the 22nd of November, about a month from now, a little bit more, which will be a 2-session seminar with, in other words, a morning and an afternoon session, because there's too many people involved, too much to say, too much organizing going on to constrain it in anything less than that. So what's going on is that this is a moving train, and people are jumping on it, because they know that there has to be a solution to this crisis. We had today speakers from 9 countries, 4 European countries, the 4 Latin American countries that were the ones that were there before, also Colombia, Mexico, Trinidad and Tobago, and Guyana, but with some very new developments there. The 4 European countries, this was definitely new and a really important aspect of this whole thing. Germany, not just Helga, but some leaders of the protest demonstrations there for economic development, for peace, against the sanctions, and so on, spoke at this event. 2 from Germany, and then 2 from Italy as well, also leaders of this same kind of process, and a person from Serbia, who is the head of the Belgrade Forum for the United World for Equals. I think that's the proper name. They have been involved in this fight against war and building a durable peace and so on. So we had a real full house in the discussion. I should tell you, I guess, that this was also, besides our YouTube broadcasting in English and in Spanish, because we did this with interpretation into 4 languages total. The main language, which was Spanish, and then interpreted into English, French, and German. Previously, we'd only had English and Spanish. So there's kind of a doubling process going here in a period of 3 weeks. So you can get an idea of where we need to be another month from now. If we are to impact the world, it must be the way it must be impacted, which, as Helga said a number of times, we have to get a couple of countries and governments to stand up and simply insist this has to be brought to negotiated peace. And that means a complete restructuring of the world security and development architecture around an entirely new world order. It will not do to kind of jerry-rig what now exists. You have to get at the underlying cause, which is the breakdown crisis of the world financial system. And Helga emphasized that we have to mobilize populations and groups in each of these countries such that those governments actually move. Now, so this was part of the discussion. Besides our YouTube channels, the Spanish and English that we had, which now has about 4,000 views, the entire session was streamed live by RT in Germany, in the German language, obviously. And that has, as of earlier today, about 30,000 plus views. Actually, that was 30,000 live when it was going on. So I honestly don't know how many it is now. But this is going to have a huge impact, and it's going to have huge repercussions going back into each of these countries, because things happened along the way in the middle of the conference. First of all, it was hosted and held in the Mexican Congress in a small meeting room that they have there, which was provided by a congressman of the PT party, which is close to President Lopez Obrador. His name is Benjamin Robles. And besides giving a very good speech, which I won't bother going through now, you'll be able to read about it, he began by announcing to the audience there that he was adding his name to the signers of the initiating declaration, and he would be organizing others to do the same. Then in the course of the question and answer period, a lengthy message came in, which we read, from a Colombian sitting congresswoman who said, I'm joining too, I sign up, and I will be giving a speech before the Congress of Colombia in the days ahead about this initiative, and more people will be joining as well. So this was the kind of process that was going on there. I think we are going to have a very significant expansion into really all areas of the world in the period ahead. The way this was done is that after the overview presented by Helga and Congressman Robles of Mexico and former Congresswoman Huerta of Mexico, there were kind of situation reports, or the perspective presented from first Europe, second from first from Latin America and the Caribbean, second Europe, and third from the United States, which was in the hands of Diane Thayer, Colonel Black, who's also a former senator from the state of Virginia, as you know, and George Koo, who has been on the Schiller Institute platform on numerous occasions. The next meeting, there will be people from Africa, there will be people from Asia, as well as many, many more people from each of these countries. What's the issue? The issue is that the world situation is nearly completely out of control. And people are recognizing this, better late than never, but they are recognizing that something has to be done about this. And they know that the Schiller Institute and the ideas of Linda LaRouche is the only possible way, A, to pull people together, and B, to actually provide a solution. I mean, it's fine to pull people together and everyone to agree with what others say and support each other, but if you don't have an actual programmatic policy to change the situation, it's not going to work. And this is where sort of the underlying theme that Helga developed is what really takes root. And this is the main point that I want to make, the concluding point, which is her emphasis on this idea that one must be at this point a world citizen to deal with this crisis. The issue of security presented to by the Russians over and over and over again, demanding that security be indivisible, that is to say, that there must be security for all if there is to be security for any, that there cannot be a situation where the security concerns of Russia are simply ignored, or worse than ignored, attacked. That is a simple fact and a reality. It is also the case, however, that development is also indivisible. You cannot have a situation where you have somebody developing and others not. Either we all develop together, or there will be no development. We will sink into a new dark age. And I think this concept, which is an old concept, this goes back to Schiller and much before, is also very well stated in the famous statement by the Mexican president, the greatest Mexican president and friend of Abraham Lincoln and ally of Abraham Lincoln, Benito Juarez, who stated in the middle of the 19th century his famous statement, "Among individuals as among nations, the respect for the rights of others is peace," to which we have added the two simple words to encapsulate the current world situation, which is, among individuals as among nations, respect for the rights of others to develop is peace. And that, I think, is the driving theme, the idea of Linda LaRouche and what Helga LaRouche has been presenting, that is going to carry this current activity forward to some important, significant developments over the coming period. I'll stop there, take a couple of questions, and then hop off.
Great. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to open up now for Q&A. Okay, so press star 6 to get into the queue, and I'll give people a minute to get in there. What I'm going to do is to read something that I don't think people may not know happened. This is a letter from Congressman Paul Gosar, House of Representatives from Arizona, and he said the following in his letter: "Dear President Putin and President Zelensky, I'm writing to each of you or your delegates with an invitation to come to Phoenix, Arizona to engage in peace talks. I'm not a diplomat. I'm a mere member of the United States Congress, but I've seen enough death and destruction among your countries. It's untenable. I've gone from troubled about the lack of peace efforts to now feeling compelled to act. The United Nations," and he goes through and he talks about the United Nations estimates of casualties and some other things. And then he says, as if this wasn't problematic enough, the duration of this conflict has been draped with nuclear undertones. From fighting around active nuclear energy infrastructure to indications or direct statements of unconventional military responses being on the table, this is no longer just a war between your nations. Months of escalation in weaponry and rhetoric endangers not just the citizens of your nations, but also the world. A pathway to peace is long overdue, and I write to offer a means to pursue this important goal." Again, press star 6 to get in the queue. I don't see anybody in there now. Unfortunately, many statements and actions by global political and military leaders are adverse to achieving peace. Inasmuch as I am a non-combatant peace activist, I have a recognized right, pursuant to the United Nations Peacemaker Program, to seek mediation through local efforts. I do so with the expectation of administrative and other support from the United Nations to set up the framework for peace talks. Peace must prevail, but does not currently seem to be an option. Therefore, I'm inviting you both to Phoenix, Arizona, where we can begin conversations to de-escalate nuclear tensions, terminate the war, and end the death and destruction plaguing both your nations. The location, Phoenix, Arizona, is far enough away from the conflict and away from the entities that are currently urging more war to be a productive location. I want to note that last formulation, entities currently are far enough away from the entities urging war. Now, what he said, just to be clear, about why he was doing this was, if there is not one leader in our politics or our military, meaning the United States, who will attempt to end this war without unthinkable global death and destruction, then I must. This is my letter to Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky, so forth. Okay, we have some people in the queue, so I'm going to go to the queue. Press star 6 if you have a question. Dennis is going to be getting off shortly, so I'll go to the first person. Okay, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. This is Kevin, St. Paul, Minnesota. I had an intervention on Congresswoman Ilhan Omar tonight, and it was they gave me the mic. I got on a pretty thorough, good question, and I think just as important, I met a few friends on the way in, especially one guy who did agreed to video this thing. And he had some wonderful signs out there about nuclear war, the money, a sign with "We support Nazis" with all these big, colorful pictures of all the people in there. It's very clear, right on point. And another guy, a military guy, who intervened right after me, was right on point on his question. Another guy. So there are two military guys there, and this guy that brought up this war question, especially nuclear war. All of them. So, and I've gave in a nice introduction. First, just said I'm Kevin. I'm with LaRouche and the Schiller Institute, and we're starting something about launching a new paradigm, something like that. And this war with Russia, is about not addressing our economic issues and social issues. Here and
okay.
I did.
I want to keep you on the line. Come back to you because we have a couple of questions about your intervention.
Okay.
But I want to go to another person here who may have a question. So stay there. I'm going to mute your line now. Okay, we'll go to the next person. Okay, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to ask Dennis to elaborate on what he said, which I thought was really important, which is that people still don't really understand, even elected officials, let alone all kinds of activists around the world, this ontological connection between the breakdown of the financial system and the collapse into war and the drive for nuclear war. And I wonder if he could elaborate on that a bit more, because I think that is really where the key issue that's got to be broken through with all these different formations that are coming into being against the war, which are long overdue, but people don't get it. And I wonder if he would say some more about that.
And I'm going to qualify the point I was making a little bit, but let me first say that the Gosar letter that Dennis was just reading, it's very good. People should know that his office was made aware of today's meeting by our organizers, so they were aware of what was going on and will follow it and so on. There may be a little competition, though, as to where the venue of the peace negotiations will be, because at the same time that he was proposing Phoenix, there is initiative coming from the German city of Stralsund, and they have called for convening talks between Ukraine and Russia there as well. And this initiative of theirs has just been backed by a significant group of French mayors, and this statement was read at today's meeting as well, in support of the Stralsund initiative. And they say, we, the mayors of France, support the elected officials of the German city of Stralsund and their efforts to convene talks between Ukraine and Russia. War is a calamity that depends on the will of men. We know that it's necessary and possible to change this, and so on and so forth. And then there are 5 or 6 signatures on this already. So there is a growing chorus of voices, and what Gosar said is part of that, and an extremely important part. On the economic question, I'm going to qualify what I said in the following way. What they don't get is the solution. What I've found in talking with people who don't make the connection between the economic crisis and the war, and therefore the need to go after those who are responsible for the economic crisis, the Wall Street, City of London banks, and so on, they know this connection all too well. In fact, the reason that they don't want to recognize it is because they realize that they are taking on something very big, powerful, and dangerous. And it's sort of a, well, I'm not going to go there type of attitude, which comes from fear, comes from recognizing just how serious this issue is, and saying, I'm not going to get involved in this at this point. I don't really understand economics. Could you explain that to me once again? As organizers, we've all had that experience. You know, you go through some of the basics of Lynn's ideas on economics, and people kind of develop a blank stare when you say we have to put the entire world financial system through bankruptcy reorganization. And 99% of all financial assets are worthless and will be frozen, and these bankers are going to get nothing. All of a sudden, people get sort of this this blank look in their eyes, which is more fear than anything else, because they realize, I know how powerful those guys are. So I think that the lack of understanding of the economics on one level is a little bit willful. On the other hand, the real problem is that they don't see their way to a solution. I mean, I think that's really the issue. They shy away from taking this on because they don't see that there is, in fact, a rapid trajectory possible towards the kind of solution which LaRouche has been talking about for many, many years. And we are in a phase of a breakdown collapse of the system. This was one of the points that Helga made in the back and forth with one of the participants in the discussion, a very important French general, de la Warde, who participated, retired general, totally against the danger of war with a lot of experience himself. But Helga was going through the fact that what weakens the position of those pushing a unipolar world and war is the fact that their entire system is breaking down. And I think that fact and the answer to that question is what's really missing from people's understanding and being willing to simply stand up and fight on this issue. Everybody knows about the CCD list and the Mirotvorets list and the fact that you don't exactly make friends by, at least not friends in those places, when you do what we've done. But the idea that there is a path to victory and that other people are in motion, that the train is moving, has, I think, begun to lead to a number of people saying, hey, wait a minute, I want to get on that train. That's going somewhere. So I think that's kind of the dynamic of the process here.
Okay, and thanks for that, Dennis. And I know you have to get going. It's also almost 9:30. What we'll do is we'll make a transition at this point. If people have other questions for Dennis and they want to ask those questions, we can forward them to him, and any other questions. We're going to leave the queue open, so press star 6 to get in the queue if you have something additional. And here's how I'm going to do this. I'm going to go back to Kevin, let him finish, and I have a couple questions about his intervention, and then ask Gerry to either respond there or just say what he's got to say. Gerry, you're able to hear me clearly now?
Yes, sure, very much.
Great.
Yeah.
You're ready to jump at any point when we need to, correct? Great. All right. Very good. So, Kevin, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. It's Kevin.
Yeah, okay. I have a couple of questions. So just describe also what the response was to your intervention.
Do you want her response?
Yeah.
Well, I did bring up this two questions really. One on the nuclear threat. I went on this video that went out about the governor of New York and said, "You have children. Do you think they're going to be safe?" And also on what was the real reason of this retracted letter, because no one believes this staffer leaked it. And was it, I brought up the Chuck Schumer statement to Trump about 6 ways to Sunday. I said, was this a Chuck Schumer moment? So on the and the letter, I brought up both we should have negotiations and the threat. She said, yes, basically it said, I'm very worried about war. I know what war is and this nuclear threat, and we should negotiate. But on the real reason, then, she said, you need to talk to the author of the letter. She didn't really get into that at all. And on this, it's kind of funny when I said and this wasn't on the, once I just gave up the mic, so I don't know if it got on there, but that's when I brought up that no one really believes this. It's just not plausible. She kind of had a little smile and a smirk when I said that. So I think they know this story that they're putting out doesn't work. And this military guy then followed me up, and he eventually put out, look, you say you want negotiation and all this stuff, but you voted for this stuff. And I talked to this guy on the way in, too, and he said $80 billion, you vote for every war, every time. It's both parties. It's a military-industrial complex. And this economy is crap. We're all bankrupt. We're all broke. And she started giving another non-answer. And at a certain point, we started intervening on her, and especially on how we started the war. And she went into this kind of rage about all the dead bodies. Don't you care about the dead bodies and this and that? And on the way out, started bringing up John F. Kennedy, about how he didn't, as I was being dragged out, and how he didn't think we should put nuclear weapons there. Why are we putting all these nuclear weapons in Ukraine? And my throat's a little sore because the private security guy, I've never been grabbed so hard in my life, and as soon as we got out of the room, he was basically throwing me against the wall, and I was just trying to brace myself, so he grabbed me harder, and he put me in a chokehold, and I was just screaming 911. I didn't know what he was going to do to me, and that's how that went, and I'll be okay, though.
Yeah, that sounds like an intervention. Let's see. That's the world of 1968. You may have missed it the first time around, but you got to see it tonight.
I know everybody heard me. I was screaming. Then after that, is Derek Chauvin? How did Derek Chauvin get out of jail? And so we'll see how the people there like that. But
all right. Well, this certainly you're welcome to stay there, given your experiences of the evening. And again, so we're going to go to Gerry, and we'll just keep the question and answer queue open. So if anybody else has either a report or comments, just press star and get in the queue, and you'll be sitting there. So Gerry, you're on.
Yeah, sure. By the way, my wife speaks to him a lot, Suzanne Rose. They've had a dialogue for years. Okay, so look, we had a very lively, intense discussion last night with the team that is deploying around Diane Sayers' campaign. And I presented, which Dennis thought was very useful to present here, a critical insight into how to shape history. Because we knew when we started Diane's campaign, particularly in the petitioning, which was an inflection point, that we had to get a leadership within the United States that will oppose this deployment, this war deployment. We knew that. We didn't know how, but we knew if that did not occur, mankind would be destroyed. And you know the kind of miracle to put Diane on the ballot, which took poetry, insight, a lot of innovation, which was the quality to do the impossible. And that quality the point I was making last night is you're not part of a campaign in the United States. You're part of an international strategic deployment in depth, and that we are shaping the United States as part of an international strategic deployment. It's the only way to think about it. You know, every leaflet you get out, every pamphlet you get out, every billboard, every sign you put on a door, it's not a one-to-one pairwise interaction. It is a global strategic deployment. And because we functioned in that way, you now have emerging, and I reference, as Dennis did this in the beginning, I referenced this letter by Paul Gosar as an indicative singularity of the kind of leadership that is now emerging. You look at Colonel Black. You look at our friend Scott Ritter. This didn't happen before the campaign. None of it would have happened. You look at what Helga's done strategically, internationally, and you look at how that is being played back into the United States. And then you look at the quality of mind which both Kynan and Jose, as I said before, the intervention they made worked because it wasn't driven by fear, it wasn't driven by rage, it wasn't driven by hatred, it was driven by agape. He addressed the ghost of the soul of AOC. And that quality of reaching into what appears to be your enemy's soul, whether they respond or not, 25 million plus people were moved by that quality of agape. You don't say it, they didn't say it, but you look at the reaction on Fox News. What's his name?
Let's talk about
Tucker Carlson. What did he say? He said explicitly the LaRouche people. No, they have never said LaRouche. Huh? He didn't?
He didn't.
I thought somebody did. Somebody did.
AOC.
Who's speaking? No, AOC. No. Who's this, by the way? Who's intervening?
Gerry, what happened was that AOC responded, and he read her response.
Right. Okay. Fine. But he said the LaRouche people, and that. But who is intervening? I'd like to know.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand why that's even true. I'm not. There's no line open on my system, so I can't tell you. I can't. But that may be the same problem Dennis was referring to.
Yeah.
So whoever there is, I have no way of controlling that from here.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'd appreciate it if somebody has comments to wait till I finish. Now, I'll be pretty angry about what I'm saying. But the reality of the situation is that quality. And you look at what Diane said in the youth deployment, the youth on the 15th, where it was asked, well, where is the exit ramp? And she said, because we're human, we don't know when or where that exit ramp will be, but we know it exists. And you look at what is beginning to emerge within the United States, where what Kevin did, what Mr. McCarthy did, is indicative. This is going on in other places. People are talking about this, are intervening on it. They're no longer watching history. They're intervening to transform history. And and you look at the kind of explosion going on, where we've catalyzed within the United States an actual realization that they do not have to put up with this anymore. And I, last night I said, well, look, what's fascinating to me is look at the political spectrum now. When the list that is headed by Helga Zepp-LaRouche, hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm getting beeped here. That the list headed by Helga Zepp-LaRouche has on it Henry Kissinger and Jeffrey Sachs. So the not that they would lead a fight, they wouldn't. They just talk. But in combination with Gozar and what we've put into place, and the way that we've defined the global strategic situation, which Dennis, this meeting today, I've got to say, as Dennis said, there is a worldwide movement to stop this war, and not just to stop this war, but as he said, to look for the kinds of solutions that we're presenting. So the campaign has been extraordinary. Now, we're not over at all. We have several, a number of days, about how many days, Dennis? About 10 more days?
Yeah.
So?
Tuesday, November 8th.
So it's about 10 more days, November 8th. And what John McCarthy did, this can be going on right to the end. We could freak this situation out. And the ghost that Jose raised is now stalking the whole caucus, which tried to do something and then was not allowed to do it. So I think we're in an extraordinary situation, and I think we just have to continue to escalate.
Okay, so we're going to go back for a minute to the Q&A, and again, press *6 to get in the queue, and we will try to determine what exactly is going on with our phone lines tonight. All right. Okay, are you able to hear us?
Yeah, hi. I hope no phantom intervener got unmuted with me. But, okay, yeah, this is Jose Vega here in the Bronx. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine.
Sure.
Okay, so first thing is I just want to provide updated figures on all of our interventions. We have a slight problem, though, with the mapping of these. These numbers probably are a little bigger because there have been groups such as the People's Party. This is something that Jimmy Dore has endorsed and started, and with the help of Nick Brana, and some people from their party came to our Schiller Institute conference last Saturday. Anyway, they've started a campaign a couple nights ago where they are asking people to go out and intervene on their congressmen, and that if they stick to the war question, they will then repost the intervention onto their platform. On top of this, Mint Press News has done the same thing. They are taking activists' interventions and promising to repost it on their platform so long as it's on the war question. Other people are doing the same thing too, on top of general plagiarizing. I say plagiarizing because I don't have a better word for it. It's somebody downloading the video and putting it up on their own site, so the views don't transfer over. It's as if that person is getting those views. So just to give a little bit of context before I give the figures. Okay, so from the Bill Ferguson intervention on Elizabeth Warren, Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Congresswoman, also a squad member, Ayanna Pressley, both in Boston, and this was Bill Ferguson and Sam, a youth member, who intervened on both of them. This was covered by Jimmy Dore on Jimmy Dore's show, where Aaron Mate and Max Blumenthal were co-hosting in absence of Jimmy Dore, who's currently doing a live show. It has about 300,000 views, about 160,000 views on my Twitter, 60,000 views on Mint Press News, and another 80,000 views on Jimmy Dore, as far as I know. Kynan's intervention on Kirsten Gillibrand is at 20,000 views right now. Diane's intervention is at about 25,000 views right now. The AOC original intervention is at about 7.6 million views from my Twitter, and then adding up all the foreign languages, I've seen it translated in French, Arabic, Spanish, Russian, Italian, and Greek. I saw it today in Greek. I don't know. And I had a lot of Greek people follow me today also. Something like 30 million views or so across all the different platforms that I've seen it reposted in. Diane was on the Duran today. This is a show that has about 350,000 subscribers. And at its peak, it had about 6.5 to 6.6 thousand people watching Diane live be interviewed for about an hour and 15 minutes or so, while also taking questions from the audience. And she was basically talking from policy positions to LaRouche, being excellent on the question of LaRouche. I would just urge people to go watch that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing.
Well, while you're thinking, let me add something in about this last business. That interview that Diane did for various reasons, maybe the most important interview that was done by persons in our organization, with the exception of LaRouche himself, in about 20 years. Rather than me tell you why that is, you should go take a look at it, and you'll see what happens in the course of the interview, especially if you happen to know the program, the Duran, and you happen to know what the caliber is of the guys that do it. They're very thorough, very serious, and they, as they said they were inspired by what she was saying. You know, the problem is if you know a lot, you know enough to be pretty, you can be depressed by what's going on, especially if you don't have a vehicle by which to intervene in the world. And you'll see this. And in fact, I would urge people to watch it and in this case, subscribe to their channel, because they're going to need help given the way that they responded to her. They were very positive. And as can be, and by the way, they had a couple of days earlier direct stated on their program that the reason for the letter being issued by the Congress was the interventions that occurred, in New York and so forth and so on. So that was also important. So I just wanted to urge that people take a look at that, and you can use it. That's the other thing. You can get it around. It's very it demonstrates what will happen. Well, actually, I won't say more, because then we're going to end up causing ourselves a problem. But it certainly would be very useful for people to take a look at it. It's the Duran. I guess we can put a link into whatever we put out on this, from this show itself.
People can look on Diane's Twitter. It's up there now. If you great. And that's also good. Send people to her. Okay, fine. Said enough about that. And also it's an international show too. Their base is primarily international. It's not. They don't have a majority viewer base in one country or another, too. For the Duran, that's what I mean. And yeah, I guess that's it. That's all I've got.